The starship times, persistence times, dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a shudder that ran through every deck. Captain Day One gripped the armrests of his command chair and watched the view screen fill with something humanity had never seen before: the Galactic Council station. It was massive. The station orbited a neutron star, its surface spinning so fast it pulled space itself into strange shapes. The station looked like a ring of crystal and metal, so large that Earth's moon could fit inside it 3 times over. Lights sparkled across its surface like a city seen from orbit. Thousands of ships moved around it, each one different from the next. Some looked like living creatures. Others were simple geometric shapes. A few seemed to be made of pure light. "We're being scanned," said Lieutenant Hana from her station. She was humanity's top expert on alien life, though until 3 months ago, she'd never actually seen any. "Multiple sources. Different frequencies. They're very thorough." Day One nodded. "Let them look. We have nothing to hide." That wasn't entirely true. Humanity had plenty to hide, mostly how scared they were. This was first contact with beings who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Earth was the new kid, and new kids usually got pushed around. "Incoming message," said the communications officer. "Audio and visual. Put it on screen." The view screen changed. A face appeared, if you could call it a face. The being had scales like a lizard, but its eyes were bright with intelligence that seemed ancient. Its mouth moved in ways that looked wrong, but the translation came through clear. "Human vessel. You are cleared to dock at Bay 773. Do not deviate from the assigned path. Do not activate any weapons systems. Do not scan our station. Welcome to Kessera Prime." The screen went black. "Friendly bunch," muttered Hana. Behind Day One, Ambassador Tae-jin stood up from where he'd been sitting quietly. He was an older man, gray-haired and calm. He'd been a diplomat for 40 years, negotiating treaties between nations on Earth. Now he had to negotiate for the entire human race. "They're testing us," Tae-jin said, "seeing if we'll follow orders." "Take us in, Captain." Exactly as they instructed. The docking process took 2 hours. The times, persistence times, was small compared to most ships in the traffic pattern. Day One watched vessels the size of cities glide past them. One ship seemed to be made entirely of crystal that pulsed with inner light. Another looked like a school of metal fish, swimming in formation. When they finally docked, the airlock opened to reveal a delegation waiting for them. There were 3 aliens. The first was another of the reptilian beings, tall, scaled, with eyes that tracked every movement. The second was stranger. It had no solid body at all. Instead, it was a cloud of glowing particles that roughly formed a humanoid shape. The third was the most disturbing. It looked like an insect, but the size of a human, with too many eyes and mandibles that clicked constantly. The reptilian spoke first. "I am Thovrek, Elder of the Valorn Council. This is Ixthara of the Kirathi, and Hive Nexus Voral of the Morvek Collective. You are the humans?" Ambassador Tae-jin stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I am Ambassador Tae-jin, representing the United Earth Government. This is Captain Day One and Dr. Hana. We are honored to meet you." Thovrek's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. It didn't look friendly. "Honored. Yes. Come. The Council will see you now." They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were alive, with moving images, star systems, alien worlds, battles, and celebrations from thousands of years of history. Beings of every description passed them in the halls. Some stopped to stare at the humans. Others didn't even glance their way. The council chamber was enormous. It was shaped like a bowl, with seats rising in tiers all around. Hundreds of aliens sat in those seats, representing dozens of species. At the center was a platform. And that's where Thovrek led them. "Humans of Earth," Thovrek's voice boomed through the chamber. "You petition the Galactic Council for membership and trade rights. You wish to join the community of advanced species. Present your case." Tae-jin had prepared for this moment. He'd practiced his speech 100 times. He talked about Earth's history, its cultures, its achievements. He showed images of human art, music, and literature. He displayed samples of human technology. The council watched in silence. Some looked bored. Others seemed amused. When Tejan finished, there was a long pause. Then Thovrek laughed. It wasn't a polite chuckle. It was a deep, mocking laugh that echoed through the chamber. Other council members joined in. The sound washed over the human delegation like a wave. Impressive, Thovrek said when the laughter died down. For primitives. Tell me, Ambassador, what military strength does Earth possess? Tejan hesitated. We have a defense fleet of 200 warships. We have weapons capable of 200, Thovrek interrupted. The Valorn maintain 40,000 ships in our home fleet alone. The Morvek Collective controls 1 million automated defense platforms. Your weapons, what are they? Chemical rockets? Atomic fission? Fusion-based warheads, Day One said, his jaw tight. Railgun systems. Directed energy weapons. The glowing cloud that was Ixthara drifted forward. Its voice sounded like music. But the words were cold. You are a species of fragile meat that barely learned to leave your gravity well. You have no genetic enhancements, no hive mind consciousness, no energy transcendence. You are biological relics in a galaxy that has moved beyond such limitations. Hana stepped forward, anger flashing in her eyes. We may not have your advantages, but we've survived. We've built civilizations. We've reached the stars on our own. Yes, said Ixthara. Like children reaching for the moon. Adorable. Meaningless, Thovrek raised a clawed hand. The Council has decided. Earth will be granted protectorate status. Protectorate? Tejan's voice was careful. It means you are too weak to defend yourselves. It means you will accept Council protection. In exchange, you will pay tribute resources, technology, genetic samples. You will host Council observers on your world. You will follow Council law. And if we refuse? Asked Day One. Thobrek's smile widened. Then you are on your own. When the Morvek Collective decides your world would make a good hive colony, do not call for help. When pirates strip your orbital facilities, do not ask for protection. When your primitive ships are destroyed by any of 1,000 hostile species, remember that you had a choice. The chamber fell silent. Every alien eye was on the humans. Ambassador Tejan looked at Day One. The captain gave a tiny nod. They'd discussed this possibility. They had no real choice. We accept protectorate status, Tejan said quietly. Under protest. We request time to present this to our government. Of course, Thovrek said. You have 30 of your Earth days. Then, the tribute begins. You are dismissed. The walk back to the Time's persistence times was silent. Only when they were in the ship, with the airlock sealed, did anyone speak. They're going to bleed us dry, Hana said. Her hands were shaking. They'll take everything we have and give us nothing. Maybe, said Tejan. Or maybe they've made a mistake. Daewon looked at the ambassador. What kind of mistake? They think we're weak. They think we'll stay weak. Tejan's eyes were hard. They've ruled this galaxy for so long, they've forgotten what it's like to be hungry, to have to fight for every advantage, to need to be smart instead of strong. So what do? Asked Hana. We go home, said Daewon, understanding dawning in his eyes. We accept their terms. We pay their tribute. And we prepare. We won. Prepare for what? Hana asked. Tejan smiled for the first time since they'd arrived. For the day when they realize they should have killed us when we were weak. Because by the time they figure that out, it will be too late. The Time's persistence times undocked from Kessera Prime Station and turned toward home. Behind them, the Galactic Council continued its business, already forgetting about the insignificant humans from the edge of known space. They would remember. Eventually, everyone would remember. 45 years passed. The galaxy barely noticed. In the great sweep of galactic history, 45 years was nothing. A blink, a breath. The Galactic Council continued its work, managing disputes between species, regulating trade routes, and maintaining order across thousands of systems. Earth paid its tribute. Every year, automated ships arrived at Cassera Prime, carrying metals, rare elements, and biological samples. The ships were always on time. The tribute was always complete. The humans never complained, and that was all anyone heard from humanity. It's been 15 years since we've had any communication from Earth beyond the tribute deliveries, said Karesh Vol, a Kirathi observer, stationed near the Sol system. He reported to the Council every decade. No requests for trade. No diplomatic contact. No expansion into neighboring systems. Perhaps they've realized their place, replied Council member Sovith, who had taken over Thovrek's position after the Elder's death. Protectorate species often become quiet. They accept their limitations, or they destroyed themselves, suggested a Morvek representative. Primitive species often do. Internal warfare. Environmental collapse. It's common. Karesh Vol wasn't so sure, but he had no evidence to the contrary. His sensors showed the Sol system was still active. Ships moved between Earth and its colonies on Mars and Europa, but there was no expansion outward. No FTL signatures beyond their home system. It was as if humanity had simply given up on the stars. He didn't know how wrong he was. Deep in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, a facility hung in the darkness. It was built into a rock 3 kilometers wide, hollowed out and reinforced. From the outside, it looked like any other asteroid. Inside, it was anything but. Director G1 stood in the observation deck, watching ships move through the construction bay. They were sleek, deadly, and completely unlike the clumsy vessels Earth had shown the Council 40 years ago. "How many do we have now?" she asked. Colonel Sung Ho consulted his tablet. 317 strike ships, 42 carriers, 15 heavy cruisers, all hidden across 30 different facilities. "Not enough," G1 said. "We've been building for 40 years, Sung Ho protested. "We've got more firepower than Earth had in its entire fleet when we met the Council." "1. And the Council has 1,000,000 ships," G1 replied. "We're not trying to match them in numbers. We can't. We need to be smarter." She pulled up a holographic display. It showed the galaxy with hundreds of red markers scattered across it. "These are deadfall stations. They look like space debris, old satellites, broken ships, but each one has enough firepower to take out a Council cruiser. We've been placing them for 20 years, and nobody's noticed." Sung Ho studied the map. "This is insane. If they catch us." "They won't," G1 said firmly. "Because they're not looking. They dismissed us. They think we're harmless. That's our advantage." In another facility, this one hidden in a rogue planet drifting between stars, Dr. Bo-Ra was solving a different problem. "The Council species have advantages we can't match," she explained to her research team. "The Kirathi have transcended biological limitations. The Morvek have a hive mind. The Valorn have centuries of lifespan. We're just human." "So what do we do?" asked one of her assistants. Bo-Ra smiled. "We cheat." She activated a display showing a complex neural network. This is the neural mesh. It's a direct interface between human brain and artificial intelligence. Not replacing our thoughts, enhancing them. Faster calculations. Perfect memory. Tactical prediction. We keep our creativity, our intuition, our humanity, but we get the benefits of AI integration. "The Kirathi will say we're copying them," the assistant said. "Let them," Bo-Ra replied. "They transcended by abandoning their bodies. We're enhancing ours. It's completely different." She didn't mention the other projects, the genetic modifications that made humans heal faster, the reflex enhancements that doubled reaction time, the endurance treatments that let soldiers fight for days without sleep. All of it was carefully designed to push human limits, without changing what made them human. The Council had advantages. Now humanity would have its own. On Earth, the tribute ships were being loaded as they had been every year for 4 decades. Council observers watched from orbit, bored with the routine. They'd been watching Earth for so long that nothing surprised them anymore. They didn't notice the subtle changes. The way human ships moved with more precision. The advanced materials that went into civilian construction. The orbital platforms that looked like communications satellites but could become weapons in minutes. Earth appeared quiet, submissive, exactly what the Council expected. In the shadows, humanity was becoming something else entirely. Colonel Sung-ho ran training exercises in hidden facilities scattered across dozens of star systems. His soldiers learned tactics the Council had never seen. Guerrilla warfare adapted for space, ambush techniques using asteroid fields. How to disable larger ships with smaller craft. How to disappear in the vastness of space. The Council fights with overwhelming force, Sung-ho told his officers. They haven't had a real war in 10,000 years. They've forgotten what it means to fight for survival. We haven't. We remember. And we'll teach them to remember too. The soldiers trained in zero gravity and high gravity. In extreme cold and extreme heat. They learned to fight in every environment the galaxy could throw at them. They learned to repair their own equipment, to improvise weapons, to survive on nothing. They learned to be what humanity had always been best at, being survivors. In the diplomatic corps, a different kind of preparation was happening. Ambassador Yoonji traveled to minor systems that the Council barely paid attention to. She made friends. She built relationships. She never asked for anything except understanding. Someday, she told the leader of a small trading species, there might be a conflict. When that day comes, I hope you'll remember that we treated you with respect, that we asked nothing of you except friendship. The species remembered. Many of them did. Year after year, the work continued. New ships were built in hidden yards. New weapons were developed in secret labs. New soldiers were trained in concealed facilities. New alliances were quietly formed. And through it all, the tribute ships kept arriving at Kessera Prime, right on schedule. By year 45, humanity had transformed itself. Not into something the Council could see on sensors or detect with observers. The transformation was deeper than that. Earth's population had grown, its technology had advanced, its military had become something focused and deadly. But more than that, humanity had developed something the Council species had lost long ago, a unified purpose. Every human knew the story of the mockery. It was taught in schools, displayed in museums, remembered in ceremonies. Every human knew that someday, the galaxy would see what they'd become. They just needed to wait for the right moment. In her office on the hidden command station, Director Ji-won reviewed the final reports. Everything was ready. The ships, the weapons, the soldiers, the stations, the alliances. 45 years of preparation. When? Asked Colonel Sung-ho. We don't start it, Ji-won said. We let them start it. We've been quiet for so long, they'll assume we'll always be quiet. Sooner or later, someone will push us. Someone will think Earth is easy prey. And then? Ji-won's smile was cold. Then they learn what happens when you underestimate humanity. In orbit around the neutron star Kessera Prime, the Council conducted its business as it had for thousands of years. They discussed trade regulations and territorial disputes. They managed the vast bureaucracy of galactic civilization. Somewhere in the records, there was a file on Earth. It was marked, Protectorate Compliant. Nobody had looked at it in years. Far out on the edge of Council space, a Morvek expansion fleet was planning its next move. They needed more worlds for their hive colonies, resources for their growing population. There were several options. One of them was a border world called New Jeju. The file said it was a human colony, 40,000 inhabitants, light defenses, protectorate status. It looked like an easy target. The Morvek fleet commander made the decision. They would go to New Jeju. They would claim it for the collective. The humans would be integrated or removed. It was standard procedure. It happened all the time. The fleet set course and jumped to FTL. In her command center, Director Ji-won's alert system chimed. A hidden sensor net had detected a large fleet heading toward human space. She smiled. Finally, she said, "Colonel, send the alert. Wake up the Shadow Fleet." "It's starting?" Sung-ho asked. "It's starting," Ji-won confirmed. 45 years of silence ends now. Let's show them what we've built. Across human space, hidden facilities came to life. Ships powered up, weapons armed, soldiers moved to their stations. The galaxy was about to remember that humanity existed, and it was going to wish it had paid more attention. New Jeju was a beautiful world. It had blue oceans and green forests, mountains that touched the clouds and valleys filled with farms. 45,000 humans called it home. They'd been there for 30 years, building cities and raising families under skies that weren't Earth's, but felt close enough. Governor Hyun-woo stood on the balcony of the Capitol building, watching the sunset. His aide rushed out, her face pale. "Sir, we have incoming ships. A lot of them." Hyun-woo turned. "Council patrol?" No, sir. Morvek Collective. Fleet strength. They're not answering hails." He felt his stomach drop. The Morvek were one of the Council's most aggressive species. When they came in fleet strength, they weren't visiting. They were taking. How long until they arrive? 2 hours. Alert everyone. Get the civilians to the shelters. Contact Captain Mi-sun. Tell her to prepare defenses. The aide nodded and ran. Hyun-woo looked at the peaceful world below and felt anger rise in his chest. They'd built this. They'd made a home here. And now, someone was going to try to take it. Well, they'd see about that. Captain Mi-sun commanded New Jeju's defense force from the orbital platform above the planet. It didn't look like much, just a small station with a few patrol ships. Exactly what you'd expect from a minor colony. That was the point. "Governor, we're ready," she reported. "All civilians are in shelters. Defense grid is standing by." "The fleet?" Hyun-woo asked. 67 Morvek ships. Cruisers and destroyers. They think this is going to be easy. Mi-sun's smile was sharp. "They're wrong." Bordise one side. "We are have never." Mi-sun's smile was sharp. The Morvek fleet dropped out of FTL like a hammer. 67 ships, each one bristling with weapons. They formed up in attack formation and moved toward New Jeju. The lead ship opened a communication channel. The voice was strange, a chorus of clicks and buzzing sounds that the translator turned into words. "Human colony of New Jeju. We are Hive Nexus Commander Vrelkoth of the Morvek Collective. This world is being claimed for the collective. You will evacuate immediately or be integrated." Governor Hyun-woo responded from the surface. "This is Governor Hyun-woo of New Jeju. We are a sovereign human colony. You have no authority here. Leave our system." 2. There was a pause. Then Vrelkoth laughed. It sounded like breaking glass. "Sovereign? You are a protectorate species. You have no sovereignty. This is your final warning. Evacuate or be destroyed." "We rejected protectorate status," Hyun-woo said calmly. "Check your records." Another pause. Longer this time. "There are no records of this. You are lying. We will give you 1 hour to begin evacuation. After that, we open fire." The channel closed. "They're not going to listen," Mi-sun said. "I know," Hyun-woo replied. "Phase 1? Phase 1. Mi-sun confirmed. 1 hour later, the Morvek fleet opened fire on the orbital platform. Particle beams and missiles streaked across space. The platform's shields flared and died. The structure began to break apart. Direct hit on the main station, reported the Morvek weapons officer. Platform is destroyed. No survivors. Vrelkoth clicked in satisfaction. Good. Now, target the planetary defenses. I want. The sensors screamed an alert. From the debris of the destroyed platform, objects were emerging. They'd been hidden inside the structure, protected by shielding that made them look like parts of the station. Now, they activated. 12 objects. Each one was small, no bigger than a fighter craft, but they moved with incredible speed. What are those? Demanded Vrelkoth. Unknown. Their accelerating weapons lock. The objects were satellites, armed with railguns that fired solid projectiles at a fraction of the speed of light. They didn't have shields or armor. They didn't need them. They fired and then moved. Too fast for the Morvek targeting systems. 3 Morvek cruisers died in the first 30 seconds. The railgun projectiles punched through their shields and hulls like they were paper. Atmosphere vented. Systems exploded. Ships that had dominated space a moment ago became debris. Return fire. Destroy them. The Morvek fleet opened up with everything they had. Beams and missiles filled space. They destroyed 3 of the satellites. The other 9 kept firing, kept moving, kept killing. Get us out of here, Vrelkoth ordered. Jump to FTL. The engines powered up. The Morvek ships began to glow with the energy needed to tear a hole in space. Nothing happened. FTL is not responding. Check the drives. The engineering officer brought up a diagnostic. Commander, our FTL cores have been sabotaged. Something damaged the quantum field generators. We can't jump. When? How? Nobody had an answer. They didn't know about the tiny drones that had been released weeks ago, drifting through the system like space dust. The drones were so small, so cold, that sensors ignored them. But when the Morvek fleet arrived, the drones had activated. They'd attached to the ship's hulls and burned through to the FTL systems with precision lasers. The Morvek had been trapped before they even knew they were in a fight. From the outer system, new contacts appeared on sensors. Ships were emerging from hiding spots in the asteroid field and behind the system's gas giant. They were human ships, but not like any in the Council's databases. These ships were lean and fast. They had sharp angles and no wasted space. They moved like predators. Admiral Jae Sung commanded the human strike force from his flagship, the Times Retribution Asterisk. He'd been waiting for this moment for years. All ships, weapons free. Target the larger vessels first. Make it quick. The human ships hit the Morvek fleet like sharks hitting a school of fish. They used missiles with smart AI that dodged defensive fire. They used lasers that could cut through armor in seconds. They used tactics the Morvek had never seen, splitting up, attacking from multiple angles, disappearing and reappearing. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 64 Morvek ships were destroyed. Their debris formed a ring around New Jeju like a grim monument. 3 ships remained, badly damaged and helpless. Admiral Jae Sung could have destroyed them. Instead, he gave an order. Let 1 ship go. Repair their FTL drive. Just enough to get them home. Sir? His tactical officer asked. I want them to tell everyone what happened here. I want the Council to know. So 1 Morvek ship was allowed to limp away. The other 2 were destroyed. The survivors jumped to FTL as soon as they could, racing back to Council space with news that would shake the galaxy. On New Jeju's surface, Governor Hyun-woo walked through the capital. There had been some damage from debris falling from orbit, but the shelters had protected everyone. No civilian casualties. Captain Mi-sun met him in the street. She'd survived the platform's destruction because she'd never been on it. She'd been commanding from a ship disguised as a piece of debris. How many did we lose? Hyun-woo asked. 3 satellites in the opening attack. 7 pilots. The platform, obviously, but it was meant to be destroyed. Mi-sun looked up at the sky, where the debris still glowed. We hurt them badly, sir. We killed them, Hyun-woo said quietly. Thousands of them. Maybe tens of thousands. They came to kill or enslave us, Mi-sun reminded him. We defended ourselves. I know. He trailed off. I hope this was worth it. Admiral Jae-sung's face appeared on Mi-sun's communicator. Governor, Captain. Well done. The Shadow Fleet is moving to reinforce your position. We're picking up increased council activity. They know something happened. What now? Asked Hyun-woo. Now we wait, Jae-sung said. We've shown them we can defend ourselves. Let's see how they respond. The response came faster than anyone expected. In the Grand Council chamber on Kessera Prime, alarms were ringing. The surviving Morvek ship had arrived and transmitted its report. The images it brought back were displayed for all to see. Burning ships, destroyed fleets, human vessels that moved with deadly precision. Council member Soveth stared at the images in disbelief. This is impossible. The humans have no military capability. Our records show. Your records are 45 years old, snapped the Morvek Hive Emperor. Clearly. They've been building in secret. They destroyed 64 of our ships. One colony did this? Asked a Kirathi representative. How? Does it matter? The Emperor's voice was filled with rage. They attacked the collective. They must be punished. They were defending themselves, said a small voice from the back of the chamber. It was a representative from one of the minor species. One that had always been ignored. Silence, Soveth commanded. The humans are a protectorate species. They have no right to military forces. This is a violation of galactic law. They claim they rejected protectorate status, another voice said. There's no record of it. Perhaps they didn't ask permission. The chamber erupted in argument. Species that had been allies for centuries suddenly found themselves divided. Some wanted to crush humanity immediately. Others urged caution. A few quietly wondered if the humans had been right to prepare. Finally, Soveth raised his hand for silence. The Council's authority cannot be questioned. If we allow this challenge to stand, others will follow. We will assemble a punitive fleet. The humans will be reminded of their place. The vote was called. It passed overwhelmingly. The galaxy was going to war with humanity, and humanity was ready. The Council's war fleet was the largest assembled in 50,000 years. 10,000 ships from a dozen species, all converging on human space. They called it the Hammer of Justice. The Council expected it to end the war in weeks. It took 3 years. Fleet Admiral Sujin watched the enemy fleet approach on long-range sensors. She stood in the command center of humanity's hidden fortress, a station built inside a hollowed-out dwarf planet. Around her, officers monitored hundreds of screens showing ship positions, resource levels, and tactical data. They're not even trying to hide, said her second-in-command. They're coming straight at us. Why would they hide? Sujin replied. They think they've already won. They think numbers are everything. She pulled up a tactical map. The enemy fleet was heading for Earth and humanity's 12 known colonies. They expected to find those colonies, defended by whatever forces had destroyed the Morvek at New Jeju. They were going to be disappointed. Send the evacuation signal, Sujin ordered. All colonies, full withdrawal. Labyrinth Protocol is now active. Across human space, colonies received the signal. Within hours, transports were lifting off. Entire populations disappeared into hidden routes that the Council didn't know existed. They'd been planning these evacuations for 40 years. Every citizen knew their role. When the Council fleet arrived at the first colony, they found empty cities. No defenders, no resistance, just abandoned buildings and silent streets. Grand Admiral Kelvoras of the Valorn commanded the Council fleet from his massive flagship, the Times Eternal Dominion **. He stared at the images of the empty colony with confusion. Where are they? No life signs, Admiral, his sensor officer reported. The colony has been evacuated. Same reports, coming from 3 other targets. They're running, said Hive Emperor Zelneth, who commanded the Morvek portion of the fleet. Cowards. Or smart, muttered Kirathi Marshal for Ashen. We're chasing shadows. Then we'll occupy the colonies and wait for them to come back, Kelvoras decided. Land, ground forces. Establish control. It was exactly what Sujin wanted them to do. The council forces spread out to occupy 12 human colonies. They had to split their fleet to cover all the targets. They had to establish supply lines stretching back to council space. They had to maintain communication across dozens of star systems. And that's when humanity struck. The attacks came from nowhere. Small human strike forces would appear, hit a supply convoy, and disappear before reinforcements arrived. Council ships would detect enemies on sensors, only to find empty space when they arrived. Communication relays would go silent without warning. It was death by 1,000 cuts. General Tae-hyun commanded humanity's ground forces. While the council occupied empty colonies, his soldiers prepared for the real war. They knew every building, every tunnel, every hiding place in those colonies. They'd built them, after all. When the council forces landed on the colony of New Seoul, they thought they had an easy victory. A week later, they were trapped in a nightmare. "We control the spaceport and the capital," reported the Velorn ground commander. "But every other building is hostile. They're in the walls, in the sewers. They attack and vanish. We can't find them. Send more troops," ordered Kelvoras. "We've sent 5 battalions. They're all pinned down. We need air support." "You have air support." "It doesn't work, sir. The humans have portable anti-air weapons everywhere. We've lost 16 gunships today." This conversation repeated across all 12 colonies. The council had the firepower. They had the numbers. But they couldn't use them. The humans wouldn't fight the way the council expected. They wouldn't line up for a fair battle. They fought like people who had something to lose. While the council was trapped on the ground, Fleet Admiral Sujin was destroying them in space. The human fleet didn't fight in large battles. They fought in ambushes and raids. They'd hidden weapons and supplies across hundreds of systems. They knew where every council ship would go before it got there. The Battle of the Torvak Void became famous. A council supply fleet of 500 ships was moving through a seemingly empty region of space. They never saw the gravity mines that humanity had placed there years ago. The mines activated and created artificial gravity wells that yanked the ships out of FTL. While the council ships were still confused, human forces struck from every angle. They'd been waiting in the void. Their ships powered down to avoid detection. In 30 minutes, they destroyed 300 council ships and crippled most of the rest. The survivors limped back to council space with tales of human devils that appeared from nowhere and vanished like ghosts. But the turning point of the war came at Arcturus Station. Arcturus was a council facility on the edge of human space. It was heavily fortified, with massive weapons platforms and a garrison of 50,000 troops. The council used it as a staging ground for attacks deeper into human territory. General Tae-hyun decided to take it. He had 2,000 soldiers. The council had 50,000. Every tactical analyst said it was impossible. Tae-hyun did it anyway. The siege lasted 6 months. The humans didn't try to assault the station directly. Instead, they cut it off. They destroyed every supply ship. They jammed every communication. They turned Arcturus into a prison. Inside the station, council forces slowly ran out of food, medicine, and ammunition. They tried to break out 3 times. Each time, human forces drove them back with minimal losses. When the council finally surrendered Arcturus Station, only 20,000 of the original 50,000 defenders were still alive. The humans had lost 300 soldiers. News of Arcturus spread through both sides. For the council, it was demoralizing. For humanity's allies, the minor species that had stayed neutral, it was inspiring. Ambassador Eun-ji had been working for years to build relationships with these species. Now her work paid off. 8 minor species announced they would no longer support the council war effort. They wouldn't fight for humanity, but they wouldn't fight against them either. The council's supply lines collapsed. Systems that had provided resources suddenly refused. Trade routes closed. The great logistical machine that had supported the Council for millennia began to break down. By the second year of the war, the Council had lost 60% of its fleet. The Morvek Collective was demanding peace. The Chirathi were withdrawing their forces to protect their own territory. Only the Valorn were still committed to total war. Grand Admiral Kelvoras refused to accept reality. He'd lost ships, lost battles, lost ground. But he had one advantage left: the Council's main shipyard at Kasara Prime, where new vessels were being built to replace the losses. Fleet Admiral Sujin decided to take that advantage away. The solar cannon had been humanity's secret weapon for years. It was built around a red giant star in an uninhabited system. Massive collectors absorbed the star's energy and focused it into a single beam that could cross light years in minutes. It had taken 20 years to build. It could only fire once before it destroyed itself. Sujin made sure the shot counted. The beam hit Kesara Prime's shipyard at 0600 station time. The energy release was equivalent to a supernova. The shipyard, which had been building ships for 200,000 years, simply ceased to exist. Along with it, died 300,000 Council personnel and the industrial capacity to build new capital ships. The Council's ability to wage war died with that shipyard. Grand Admiral Kelvoras watched his screens in horror as the shipyard's signal vanished. He stood on the bridge of the Time's Eternal Dominion asterisk, surrounded by the remnants of his once mighty fleet. Behind him, his officers waited for orders. He had none to give. A communication request came through. Human source. Put it on screen, he said quietly. Fleet Admiral Sujin appeared. She looked tired, but determined. Admiral Kilvoras. The war is over. You've lost 60% of your fleet. Your shipyard is destroyed. Your allies are abandoning you. You can keep fighting, and we'll keep killing you. Or you can surrender. You cannot defeat the entire Council, Kilvoras said. But his voice lacked conviction. We already have. You just haven't admitted it yet. Sujin's eyes were hard. We didn't want this war. You came to us. You tried to enslave us. We fought back. Now you have a choice: peace or extinction. There was a long silence. What are your terms? Kelvoras asked. Sujin transmitted a document. Complete sovereignty for all human worlds. Reparations for the war. Dismantling of the Council's military to defensive forces only. Formation of a new galactic assembly where all species have equal votes. The Council will never accept this. Then the Council will die, Sujin said simply. We can keep fighting for another 10 years if you want. We've prepared for it. Have you? Kelvoras looked at his fleet. Ships that were damaged and running low on supplies. Crews that were exhausted and demoralized. He thought about the colonies they'd occupied, where human resistance fighters made every day a new nightmare. He thought about the shipyard that was now dust and vapor. I need to consult with the Council, he said. You have 48 hours, Sujin replied. After that, we start targeting your homeworlds. Not to conquer them. Just to make sure you can never threaten us again. The transmission ended. 2 days later, the Council accepted humanity's terms. The war was over. The surrender was signed on Earth, in the same city where humanity had first reached for the stars. Representatives from every Council species came to acknowledge humanity's sovereignty. They signed documents that made humans equal partners in galactic civilization. Grand Admiral Kelvoras signed last. His hand shook as he put his name to the treaty. You've won, he told Sujin. But you've made enemies across the galaxy. Good, Sujin replied. Let them remember. Let them remember that underestimating humanity was the mistake that destroyed the greatest empire in galactic history. Let them remember that we didn't ask for this war, but we finished it. And let them remember that we're not going anywhere. Kelvoras left Earth, knowing his species would never recover its former glory. The Valorn had ruled the stars for millennia. Now they were just another species in a galaxy that humanity had reshaped. The message had been sent. The galaxy would never mock humanity again. 346 years after the war ended, A young Velorn stood before the ruins of a starship and tried to understand how his ancestors had been so foolish. Professor Kilvesh was a historian, barely 60 years old, young for a Velorn. He taught at the Academy of Historical Warnings, a school built on the planet that everyone now called Remembrance. It had once been a battlefield. Now, it was a memorial. Class, gather around. He called to his students. They were a mixed group. Velorn, Kirathi, Morvek, and a dozen other species. Even a few humans, though they usually knew this history better than he could teach it. They stood before the wreckage of the Time's Eternal Dominion Asterisk, Grand Admiral Kelvorus's flagship. It had been preserved exactly as it fell. A monument to failed arrogance. Can anyone tell me when this ship was destroyed? Kilvesh asked. A young Kirathi raised her energy form hand. Year 2901, Professor. Final battle of the 3-year war. Correct, Harmony Node Prishan. And why was it destroyed? The students looked at each other. Finally, a Morvek drone spoke. Its voice a chorus of clicks translated to words. Because the Council underestimated humanity. More specific, Kilvesh prompted. Because the Council believed technological superiority guaranteed victory, said a human student named Donghyun. They forgot that war is about more than weapons. It's about will, strategy, and the willingness to adapt. Kilvesh nodded. The Council had better technology, more ships, more soldiers, every advantage except the one that mattered. They had forgotten how to fight an enemy that refused to quit. He led them through the ship's corridors. The interior had been left untouched. Blast marks still scarred the walls. Emergency lights still flickered. It was like walking through a tomb. My ancestor, Grand Admiral Kelvorus, stood on this bridge when he received humanity's surrender terms, Kilvesh said. He didn't like talking about his ancestor, but it was important. He had a choice. Keep fighting and watch his species burn, or surrender and live with the shame. He chose survival. Was he a coward? Asked one of the younger students. A Velorn barely old enough to understand the question. No, Kilvesh said firmly. He was a leader who finally understood what humanity had known from the beginning. That pride is worthless if your species goes extinct. He saved billions of lives by ending a war the Council could never win. They emerged from the ship and walked across the memorial grounds. Scattered across the landscape were the remains of ships from every Council species. Velorn cruisers, Morvek carriers, Kirathi energy vessels, all destroyed, all preserved as lessons. At the center of the memorial was the Monument of Names. It was a massive black wall, 3 kilometers long, covered in writing. Every being who died in the war was listed there, human and alien, soldier and civilian. Every single one. 3,700,000 names, Kilvesh said quietly. Most of them, Council species. We started the war. We paid the price. Prishan drifted close to the wall, her energy form flickering. So many died. Why didn't the humans just destroy everyone? After they won, they could have killed all of us. That, said a new voice, is the most important question. An older human walked toward them. She wore a simple uniform with Admiral stars on the collar. The students recognized her immediately. Admiral Emeritus Yun Su, great-granddaughter of Fleet Admiral Su Jin, who'd commanded human forces during the war. Admiral, Kilvesh said, bowing slightly. We didn't expect you today. I come here often, Yun Su replied. She looked at the students. To answer your question, young Kirathi, we didn't destroy the Council species because we weren't fighting for supremacy. We were fighting for respect, for the right to exist on our own terms. She walked to the monument and placed her hand on it. Every name here is someone who died because the galaxy couldn't accept that humanity deserved a seat at the table. Some of them were our enemies. Some were our friends. All of them died in a war that never should have happened. What stopped you from taking revenge? Asked the young Velorn student. Yonsu smiled sadly. Because we remembered what it felt like to be weak, to be mocked, to be dismissed. We won the war, but we didn't want to become the thing we'd fought against. We wanted to change the galaxy, not rule it. She pulled up a holographic display showing the current galactic map. Look at the galaxy now. No council, no empire. Instead, we have the assembly, where every species has an equal vote, where disputes are settled with words instead of weapons, where nobody is dismissed because they're different. But humans are the strongest military power, Prishan pointed out. Everyone knows this. Yes. Yonsu agreed. And we keep that military small deliberately. We have enough to defend ourselves and help others, but not enough to conquer. Because the moment we become conquerors, we've lost everything we fought for. The class moved on to their next stop, the city of New Jeju, rebuilt after the battle. Governor Hyunwoo's original Capitol building still stood, preserved as a museum. Inside were displays showing the battle, the 45 years of preparation, and the decision to reject protectorate status. Donghyun, the human student, served as a guide here. He was training to be a curator at the Museum of Reconciliation on Earth. This is where it started, he told the class. When the Morvek came to take this world, they thought it would be easy. They learned differently. Your people killed 64 ships, the Morvek drone said. Its voice held no anger, just acknowledgement. The collective has never forgotten. Neither have we, Donghyun replied. We remember it as the day the galaxy finally took us seriously. You remember it as the day the collective learned that size isn't everything. They watched a holographic recreation of the battle. The students saw the hidden railgun satellites emerge from the destroyed platform. They saw the human strike ships appear from hiding. They saw the Morvek fleet die. It looks like a massacre, Prishan said quietly. It was, Donghyun agreed. War usually is. That's why we teach this. So future generations remember the cost of arrogance on both sides. The final part of their tour was a viewing of the historical records. In a quiet theater, they watched footage from the Council's first meeting with humanity 391 years ago. They saw Ambassador Taejin present Earth's case. They saw Thovrek laugh. They heard Ixthara's dismissive words. You are biological relics. In a galaxy that has moved beyond such limitations, the students shifted uncomfortably. Those words echoed across the centuries, a reminder of the Council's fatal mistake. Then they watched the final message from Elder Zoveth, recorded just before the Velorn accepted surrender terms. The old Velorn appeared on screen, scales dull with age and defeat. We believed ourselves eternal, Zoveth said. We believed our superiority was natural law. We ruled the galaxy for 200,000 years, and thought nothing could challenge us. We were wrong. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Humanity was not superior to us in technology or biology. They were simply unwilling to lose. They adapted, where we remained rigid. They innovated, where we relied on tradition. They united while we remained divided. And when we finally understood what we faced, it was far too late. Why? End. Another pause. To future generations watching this, learn from our failure. Strength comes in many forms. Intelligence is not the same as wisdom. And the most dangerous enemy is the one you dismiss without understanding. The galaxy mocked humanity once. Now their children will study our ruins as a warning. This is justice. This is karma. This is what we earned. The recording ended. The theater was silent. Professor Kilvesh spoke into that silence. Elder Zoveth died 3 years after recording that message. His final act was establishing this academy, this memorial. He wanted to make sure no species ever repeated the Council's mistake. Do you think it worked? Asked the young Valorn student. Kilvesh looked at his mixed species class, former enemies studying together, learning together. Yes, he said. I think it did. The class ended, and the students dispersed. Some went to write their required essays. Others stayed to explore the memorial further. Prishan approached Admiral Yonsu, who had stayed to watch the recording. Admiral, may I ask you something? Of course. Do you hate us? The council species? For what was done to humanity? Dud. Yonsu considered the question carefully. Hate is a poison that hurts the one who carries it more than the target. Do I wish the war had never happened? Yes. Do I wish my great-grandmother could have lived in peace instead of commanding a war fleet? Absolutely. But hate? She shook her head. No. That's not what we fought for. What did you fight for? The same thing every human has fought for throughout history, the right to determine our own fate. To be respected, not as the strongest or the smartest, but as equals. The war was about that right. The peace is about maintaining it. She gestured to the memorial around them. This place exists, so we all remember. The council species remember not to be arrogant. Humanity remembers not to become what we defeated. And new species learn from both our mistakes. Prishan flickered thoughtfully. I'm glad humans won. Yonsu smiled. So am I. But I'm more glad we found a way to peace afterward. Winning the war was necessary. Building what came after that was the real victory. As the sun set over remembrance, Admiral Yonsu walked through the memorial one last time. She did this every year on the anniversary of the war's end. She walked past the ships, past the monument, past all the preserved pieces of that terrible conflict, and every year, she whispered the same words at the monument of names. We remember. We learn. We move forward. Across the galaxy, billions of beings lived in peace. Humans and Valorn worked together on scientific projects. Kirathi and Morvek traded freely. Former enemies had become partners, not through force, but through understanding. The galaxy had learned its lesson, and somewhere in a classroom on Earth, a teacher was telling the story of humanity's greatest moment to a new generation. Not the battles or the victories, but the choice humanity made afterward to build instead of destroy, to teach instead of dominate, to change the galaxy not through fear, but through example. The title of the lesson was simple. The galaxy mocked humanity. Once. Now. Their children study the ruins as warning. And every student, human and alien alike, understood what that meant. Respect is earned. Arrogance is punished. And the truly powerful are those who choose mercy when they could choose revenge. These were the lessons written in starship hulls and memorial stones, taught in academies across 1,000 worlds, and remembered by every species that called the galaxy home. The war was over. The real work building a better galaxy had only just begun. And humanity, once mocked and dismissed, now stood as the example of what that better galaxy should be. Not rulers, not conquerors, but teachers, reminding everyone that arrogance leads to ruin, and that the strongest species is the one that lifts others up instead of pushing them down. The galaxy had learned, and it would never forget.